Okay, so as we start our poetry unit, the first thing I want to talk to you about is poems in itself. Poetry, even though sometimes we might go about it and think that it's hard to understand and we don't get it, but if you can understand your favorite song on the radio and understand the underlying meaning of it, then you can understand poetry, because the only difference is that music has a beat behind it. It has that the music. Um, most songwriters are also poem. They write poems. Tupac, he wrote poems. We're going to read one of his poems today and tomorrow. Um, because if we listen to a song and all it said was, my girlfriend dumped me and now I hate her, it would be very boring, right? Or, if it said exactly what was going on, it wouldn't mean as much and it would be boring. So we use figurative language and descriptive words and things like that to make the music sound more interesting and catchy. And that's the same thing a poet has to do. So we're going to go over the poetic devices. So first, a poet is limited in the materials that he can use in creating his works. Unlike having the music in the background and things like that, a poet all he has is his words to express his ideas and feelings. The words need to be precisely right on several levels at once. So, for a good poem, I mean, anyone can write a poem, but for it to be a good, deep poem, it must have all of these things. The words must sound right to the listener. So that's kind of like referring back to what I said before. If all the poet said was, I'm lonely, my mom just died, and I want to cry. That's sad, but it doesn't really get the point across to she's really feeling. But if we use deeper words and you compare it a little, for example, Miranda Lambert had a song, I guess probably about 10 years ago now, and it was called Dead Flowers. And the song seemed like, it was just, like if she just talked about her husband not paying attention to her, it would be kind of boring and no one would listen to it. Instead, she kind of uses this metaphor of flowers. And that makes it kind of catchy, more delightful to the ear. And then that goes also into that the words must have a meaning, which has been unanticipated. What does unanticipated mean? Anyone here know? What does it mean to anticipate something? What does it mean to anticipate? Nobody knows what it means when you're anticipating anything?
Like predicting?
Yeah. Or you're getting ready for something. Like I'm anticipating Christmas. I want to see what I'm going to get. But, the meaning might be unanticipated, which means it might seem like at first the song's going to be, sometimes we might hear a song and it seems like it's going to be dark and dreary, and then it's really like kind of like Friends in Low Places, and then all of a sudden he's like, I got friends, I don't care, and that's unanticipated. We didn't expect it to go that way. The words must be arranged in a relationship and placed on the page in ways that are at once easy to follow and assist the reader in understanding. So poetry kind of goes in the same way that a song does. You got, I feel like this at first, and then I feel like this now, and then I have the ending. The old, and a poem's the same way. It's gonna kind of go in a sequence, and that's what that means. But lastly, and most importantly, the words of the poem that the poet uses must probe the depths of human thought, emotion, and empathy. What does it mean to probe? Anyone know? Anyone ever heard that movie? Huh? I said that movie, that name. To be nosy, sort of. You might have heard that word on a movie. That's why I said movie earlier. Like on alien movies, when you hear about the alien probed in my mind or something like that. But it means a little bit more. It means to dig and explore. So the words must probe, or we could say explore, the depths of human thought, emotion, and empathy while appearing simple, self contained, and unpretentious. Unpretentious just means non arrogant, like it's not meaning to look like it has something deeper. So if I went back to that same song I was talking about earlier with the dead flowers, on the outside, if you were to just listen to it and not think about the deeper meaning, it just seems like she's talking about flowers that are in a vase. Nobody's paying attention to them and they're dying. But on the deeper meaning, it goes into, it's a metaphor for this wife that her husband's neglecting her, not paying attention to her, and she feels like she's withering away like dead flowers. And so a good poem, just like a song, should do these things. It should make us think further into emotion and empathy. Does anyone know what empathy means? What about sympathy? What does it mean when you have sympathy? Feel bad for somebody. Empathy goes a bit deeper. Like, for instance, let's say one of my students' father passed away, and they did. I don't know what that's like. I can feel sympathy for him. I can feel bad, but I have not experienced that. So I don't know what that feels like. However, I've also had a student that's lost a sibling. I have lost a sibling as well, so I can have empathy for him because I know exactly what that feels like. So to have sympathy means, yeah, we feel bad, but we really can't put ourselves in their shoes. But when you have empathy for someone, that means you've been there. You know what that's like. So when we think about that in poetry, a good poem or a good poet doesn't write about things that they don't know about. For example, if I were a poet or a songwriter, I can't write about life in New York City because I have no idea what that's like. I can write about being a middle class woman with a family that has to work every day, and then the people that have lived those lives, they can have empathy because they feel the same way. People that are also moms that work and have to do all these things, and they can empathize with that. When you listen to music, most of the time your favorite song is going to be something that you empathize with, something that you've been through, something that you can relate to, right? And that's all that means. Next slide. Going a little bit further into the rhyme schemes, and we'll go a little bit further into this even more so when we go into the actual poems. But rhyme schemes are just, the order in which the rhymes are placed. So if you have a alternate rhyme, you would have like A, B, A, B. And that simply means that line A rhymes with line A, and B rhymes with B. Or, in coupled rhymes, that's the same thing. So I might have A, B, B, C, C. That might sound something like, after I opened the door, I went to the store, walked down the street with lots of people to meet, A, B, B. And that's all that is. And it goes on here a little bit further to different types of rhymes here. When you have, A, that just means, if all the lines rhyme, you don't have back and forth and things like that. The arrangements of words, you will be testing on. So this is a little bit more important. I'm going to look for this when we're into our testing. You'll be asked questions on this. So a line. Poetry is arranged into a series of units that do not necessarily correspond to sentences, but rather to a series of metrical feet. You all have seen a poem before. You know that just because the line ends there, that doesn't necessarily mean the sentence ends there. And that's all that's saying. It corresponds with the beat and the rhyme scheme that you're going with. A verse is one single line of a poem arranged in a metrical pattern, and a stanza, and remember that, is a group of verses. It's a group of, like those lines. If you've ever seen a poem, it kind of looks like a paragraph, and there's a little space in between. Those are stanzas, and from this point forward, that's how we will address them. We will call them stanzas. So on your test, I might ask you a question about, in stanza 2, what did the poet mean by blah, 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 or what does this mean in stanza 3? So you have to know what a stanza is, and those are what you might think of as separate paragraphs. Those stanzas can have any type of different lines within those. Some stanzas have 2, some stanzas have 4 lines, and those also you will be tested on. If you have a stanza with 2 lines, that's a couplet. 3 lines, that's a tercet. 4 lines, a quatrain. 5 lines, a quintet. 6 is a sestet. 7 is a septet, and 8 is an octave. And here, you're mostly going to see a quatrain. But again, on your test, you might see something that says, how many what would we call stanza 2? And you would put like a quatrain if it's got 4 lines in it. All right, and the last thing we're going to talk about is the sounds of words, assonants and consonants. Assonants is repeated vowel sounds within the word. So this should be sounds that are accented or stressed rather than a vowel that sounds are unaccented. So here we have Andrew patted the pony at the ascot. So that ah constantly, that's assonance. Consonants is repeated consonant sounds at the ending of words or placed near each other. These are sounds that are accented or stressed. And it produces sort of a rhyme, but not quite. It's not a rhyme, but it's closely similar, like boats into the pasts. Both has that sound. Or cool soul, it has that ul sound. And that's assonants and consonants. And that is it for our poetic devices.